I think we can all agree that anyone still peddling out NFTs or still attempting to put it into a video game is either just trying to scam you, trying to make back some money from their failed investments, or just doing the bare minimum of getting some asset flip slop game out there so they can say to their investors, well, we did try, but we failed, sorry, thanks for the millions of dollars though, also known as doing a rug pull. And because of that, all we're left with is a bunch of garbage. Abandonware and shovelware, all left to be forgotten forever in the sea of ever-increasing Steam releases. But that's where I come in, to do the job that frankly, no one should ever do. Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back to another episode of I try to play all the NFT games on Steam so you don't have to. Although it's probably more apt to say I look at NFT games on Steam, since I'm pretty sure at least 40% or so of all NFT games in this series don't even have a playable game. And I don't mean they just don't work, I mean they quite literally don't have anything to show. But I like to cover them anyway, since it's always fun to see what kind of nonsense NFT bros come up with to try and entice any gamers walking by, before realizing, oh wait, game development is hard, and that the standards of your average gamer is significantly higher than the standards of crypto and NFT bros, a subspecies of human that are easily impressed by a randomly generated JPEG of a fucking monkey. So if that sounds interesting to you, come and join me on my journey to cover all of the trash that managed to make its way onto Steam, and hopefully have some laughs along the way. So without further ado, let's get to the first game for this episode, shall we? Hiya!
Nice throw!
Mad Viking Games VR Experience. That's the title, is a VR game where you can this, and also this. That's not sarcasm, by the way, that's what they actually put as a description for their game. The selling point, the main draw of this game, is that you can pick things up, and that you can walk around. Incredible. Now if this came out in say 2015, 2016 when VR gaming started gaining traction, being able to walk around and pick stuff up still wouldn't have been that impressive. It would have been considered the bare minimum even then, which the fact that this is a 2024 release just makes things a bit worse, and the entire gaming base would agree since it only has 9 reviews, which is not even enough for a score, with the majority of reviews having less than 30 minutes in the experience, although it is mostly positive, so that's a good sign, right? But the whole point, and the only reason for Mad Viking Games' VR Experience's existence, is to be a gateway to their NFT and crypto ecosystem, which as of 2025 currently consists of unreleased game number 1 and unreleased game number 2. One plans on being a first-person open-world game that will expand to include all other realms in Nordic mythos. Yeah, good luck with that. And the second one, get this, plans on being a fucking esport, focusing on short battles between NFT characters and have highly strategic and competitive design. And you know what? More power to them. If they manage to turn this into a turn-based esport, I'll eat my hat. I don't even have a hat, but I'll eat one. And of course, these games will all be built on the Unreal Engine 5, an extremely powerful engine in the right hands, but also very complex, to the point where even AAA devs have trouble figuring it out and properly optimizing. So I'm sure this small team of NFT devs will definitely figure it out. Also love how this section on the Unreal Engine just links to a video that Unreal made. Not to say Mad Viking's own experience of Unreal Engine or how they're using it, you know, something that would prove to us that they know what they're doing. But I assume this section is just to look pretty for any potential investors they could scam for some funding. As for the NFT part, well, unfortunately or fortunately, they don't exist. Mad Vikings never got to that part. If you try to go to their marketplace, it's still coming soon. But the plan was to have characters, which are high quality and made for UE5, 3D items, and land sites. In other words, it's pay to win, and pay to win. But fortunately for us, we do get to see these high quality models that were made for UE5 with this handy 3D model viewer. Are you ready? Check this out. Just look at all of that high quality made for UE5. Oh my god, it's so detailed. I just might have to blur it out. Wouldn't want YouTube age restricting this video. How many pixels is that? 2? 3 maybe? I mean, props to them. They definitely didn't just take this from the asset store, because ain't nobody charging money for this. And although they never got to the NFT minting step, they still managed to crap out a crypto coin called MVG, with the majority of this coin being given to private owners, about 88.9% of it, with the current going rate for these coins being around 0.002 USD, aka completely worthless, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Now, I'm not a FUD merchant or anything, but I really doubt this project is ever gonna go anywhere. In fact, I don't even know if this company is still in operation. Checking their socials, their last YouTube activity was a year ago. On Instagram, their last post was in 2023, their Discord invite link doesn't work, on Reddit it's a bunch of posts from 2 years ago, and on Twitter, their last post was in September of 2024, which is kinda recent, I suppose, but all it is are videos of a bunch of AI generated images talking about crypto staking. I'll give them credit, they at least tried to tie it into the lore of the game. It didn't work, but you know, it's the thought that counts. Not a single video talks about any of the games themselves, just all the Web3 crap. But I suppose it's hard to talk about something that doesn't exist. Also, you can easily tell it's AI gen because they were using an iteration of AI that has a lot of trouble with hands, among other things. See, look at this. What's going on here? Is that 4 fingers or 5? He's not even gripping that axe. Also, what's this? And why can be seen through the shield? Look at that hand, it's not even trying. That's a weird looking sword. Love the complete 180 in art style here. Is that supposed to be a mouse cursor? Bro doesn't even have fingers in this one. What's up with all the smudge? Also, bro's fingers melted together. This guy only has 4 fingers, and this guy as well, maybe. This one is my favorite. It's like the AI just gave up. And what was I talking about again? Oh right, why this company is probably dead and it was all just a rug pull. So, on the 26th of January of this year, 2025, Mad Viking Games made a post on Medium, which is a blogging website now commonly used by crypto devs, talking about an exciting opportunity for MVG token holders to voluntarily exchange their tokens for tokens in a completely separate and new project? Huh? That's weird. Why would they want you to dump all their coins for a completely different project that's not even theirs? Odd. All before talking about some crypto reckoning in the EU with the introduction of a new regulation for MICA, or Markets in Crypto Assets, which establishes EU market rules for crypto assets, yada yada, not important. But what this means, or what it meant for Mad Vikings, is that they needed to put their project under review, and until the review is finalized, they can't promote the project. According to sources, it takes about several months to get MICA compliance approval, and it's December now, so it's almost been a year since this post and no updates, or anything. So yeah, take from that what you will. But don't you worry, because the future has never looked brighter for Mad Vikings since they're now pivoting towards using AI for everything, waiting for the AI tools to mature so they can reap the benefits and be able to more easily and more affordably create NFT scams. Hooray! As for the VR experience itself, I didn't actually play it in VR. Unfortunately, I don't have a VR headset. I considered buying one since I am interested in VR games like Beat Saber and Half-Life Alyx, but then I saw that even older models of VR headsets still go for around $200 Australian and thought, nah. So I played it in non-VR, which is still technically playable, so hey, a point for that. But before all that, when I first launched this game, it opened in what I assumed to be a 640 by 400 resolution. I don't know, is that normal for VR games? And unfortunately, there was no way to change this in-game. The only options were low settings and high settings, which just turned off shadows. Luckily, F11 still worked, so that's just a pro tip for you. Also, love the decision to make the fire noise only come out of these 2 torches and not the other one. It's truly unique and represents the amount of effort typically put into NFTs in general. Now the first course of action is figuring out the controls. None of the tutorials helped since they were obviously catered to VR, but with the help of a Steam review, I was able to find the buttons. T to teleport, left and right click are your hands, and the L button lets you click on menus. So with that figured out, we can click play on this experience. which takes us to another, albeit bigger room to roam around in. Since I'm playing in non-VR, I can't move the hands at all. They are stuck in place, so in order to pick things up, I had to move my camera in a way so that the hands were inside whatever I wanted to pick up, which is honestly not a lot of things. But since this room is incredibly dark, I decided to pick up the torch and... oh. There's no crouch button in this game, so I can't get any lower to pick up the torch. So I needed to do some physics shenanigans to try and get this torch again. And it worked! I'm so good at video games. Although now that I'm holding it, it doesn't really look that much brighter, so... huh! I tried to pick some more stuff up and it was kinda difficult, not because it was hard to position, but rather the hands get stuck or it grabs something but it just doesn't move. I'm not sure. But since this is all that's advertised, I figured I'd just throw things around. Also, no sound effects. Truly high quality gameplay. Now look, because I don't have a VR headset and I'm not playing it the way it's supposed to be played, I'm not exactly going to fault them for the controls. It's my fault for not spending a couple $100s to play this properly. But what I can fault them for is how poorly optimized it was. Seriously, this VR experience was taking upwards of 80% of my CPU and like 50% of my GPU. This tiny ass 3GB demo with barely anything in it was making my PC run harder than when I played Remnant 2, a game with actual stuff going on. Also, just listen to this. Just listen to that. What's this game doing to my computer, bro? I don't think that sounds good at all. It's just a VR game. Why is it making my PC do that? Oh god. Dude, as I was just filming this part, this game crashed. What's going on with this game, dude? Oh. Would you look at that? The sound went down. It stopped making noise. After that crash, by the way, I needed to restart my PC since OBS also crashed and refused to work. Luckily, I didn't lose any footage. I did have a look at the specs for this experience, and at minimum, you need at least an RTX 2060, but it's recommended to have at least an RTX 3060 Ti, which I do have, but Jesus Christ, what are these requirements? For comparison, Half-Life Alyx, another VR game, has a minimum requirement of a GTX 1060, several generations behind the 2060, and while not official, PC Gamer recommends at least an RTX 2070 for high settings, which is weaker than an RTX 3060 Ti that Mad Vikings require for their 10-minute demo. Unreal Engine 5, baby! Anyways, I wander around the hall some more and half of the rooms are still coming soon. Note this game doesn't advertise as an early access game or even as a demo. It is technically a finished experience, so I guess we can add this to the list of abandoned games as well, but you probably already knew that. As for the rooms that are accessible, there's this one with a wooden statue of their troll NFT, and this one that has all their high quality made for UE5 models that we saw on the website. There's two areas in this room that the devs want us to have fun in, I assume, by letting you pick up weapons and play around with them. There's axe throwing that has the unique mechanic of only sometimes having a sound effect. And then there's this one that lets you pick up a sword or spear to destroy some training dummies, as well as sword surfing, something they don't advertise, but I'm sure is just a cool little Easter egg for cool people like me. Also, just simply touching the dummy with the sword, not even swinging it, cuts them up, so it must be a pretty powerful sword. These dummies didn't stand a chance. And that's it. That's Mad Viking Games' VR experience. It's pretty ass. Seriously, the trailer for this game basically shows you everything you can do in the game. I didn't even need to play it. I could have just had the trailer playing this entire time and it would have been the same thing, minus the sword surfing. Oh, actually, there is one more thing you can do. You can grab these mugs and get beer. Hooray! Also, I got the torch stuck at the top of the stairs, which the game just pushes you off of if you try to walk up it, so... high quality gameplay! We must revive this post-industrial world. Welcome to Die Lost, an unreleased game that has a planned release date of sometime in 2025. Well, time's a-ticking guys, only got a month left. In this game, you plant trees to get karma. Then you connect those trees with pipes. What? I don't think that's how a forest works, but go off, queen. And sometimes things or other people will attack you for your pipes or karma or something, because not all people in one team. One team crossed out, ooh, scary. This game looks pretty bad, and honestly looks like those dime a dozen mobile games where you have to build a city or a kingdom, spend hours waiting for something to build, and wait for your resources to pile up, all while people can attack you, etc. It sounds just like an extremely basic and bare bones version of that. I mean, just read the description for yourself. It's all painfully generic. And they also, for some reason, have a quote here from the famous Hayao Miyazaki of Ghibli fame. Why is this here? I'm fairly certain Miyazaki would be absolutely livid to learn that he's being quoted by a scammy NFT dev. Oh yeah, remember, this is an NFT game, which now that I think about it, is fairly ironic that the premise of this game is that the world has been polluted and destroyed, all whilst promoting and utilizing blockchain and NFTs. There's a metaphor in there somewhere, I'm sure. But the whole point of Die Lost, a game whose last known activity was sometime in February, which openly talked about NFTs and crypto coin on their Steam patch notes, is to find spy radios around the world to craft NFTs, with lucky players finding NFTs that don't require tokens, meaning the vast majority of NFTs require you to buy into their crypto coin, which of course they have. Lost tokens. They were distributed in-game at some point on the 23rd of May 2024. But they're not listed at all on any site, their Discord link is dead, and their Twitter, radio silent. So I'll just go ahead and assume these tokens no longer exist. As for their NFTs, well, apparently they do exist, but I guess either nobody has listed them on any marketplace, or they're not allowed to yet. I don't know. This project has had no new developments since the beginning of this year, so unless something happens before the end of the year, I'll just file this one under abandoned. It was an interesting read though, with the dev trying real hard to sound new and innovative. For example, Die Lost is a new type of game, a game played entirely on-chain, which already not allowed on Steam, but it doesn't have a single blockchain element inside. What? But it's played on the blockchain. Game, I assume he means Die Lost here, that creates a crypto asset with every move you make. What? So every time I take a step, a crypto asset is made? Wouldn't that be a blockchain element since the asset is stored on the blockchain? And on top of that, wouldn't that be a blockchain transaction as well? And also, wouldn't that make the game super laggy if every single thing became a crypto asset every time? What? But only makes them available on third-party websites. Alright, basically the skirt Steam's rules. Game that is completely open source and governed entirely by the player's DAO. What? Isn't a DAO handled on the blockchain, so it's a blockchain element? I'm seeing a few flaws here and some contradictory statements, but if anyone would like to take a guess on what any of this means, leave a comment, because I have no idea. Feel free to give me an ELI5. I also tried their link to the open source code, but it never loads, so I'll assume that it no longer exists or they took it down. Whatever the case, I think this project is a bust. A complete waste of time. Although to be fair, even if it wasn't a bust, it still would have been a waste of time. But they were really hoping to be able to do just the bare minimum here and let the crowd do all the work with running, governing, maintaining, and hell, even distributing the game. But they forget that NFT bros don't actually want to work, they just want easy get rich quick schemes. Asking them to actually write code and program is a fool's errand. You'd be better off at getting a literal monkey, not that one, to use a computer. And that's a Die Lost. I don't even know what this was. Solforge Fusion, a collectible card game. Oh boy, another card game, of course it is! Solforge Fusion is a free-to-play early access game released on the 17th of April 2024, and currently sits on mostly positive with 77% of the 285 reviews being positive. Now this one might potentially come as a shock to some of you. It certainly gave me a bit of a shock because of the two developers of Solforge Fusion that's name dropped on the store page. Justin Gary, a pro Magic the Gathering player and founder of Gary Games, now known as Stoneblade Entertainment. He's known for creating the physical and digital deck building game called Ascent Chronicle of the Godslayer in 2010, as well as a more recent and successful Kickstarter project called Ascension Tactics in 2020. And the other developer? Well, it's Richard Garfield, the OG creator of Magic the Gathering. You know, one of the biggest and most popular card games of all time? Yeah, that one. Although he's currently working as an indie designer, only occasionally contributing to MTG. But these are some big names. In fact, Richard Garfield is probably one of the biggest, at least in the nerd sphere, which definitely made me question this whole thing just a little bit. Because why on earth would they ever pivot towards NFTs? In fact, I honestly thought this was a mistake, because there's no way these incredibly talented and intelligent people would ever even consider NFTs, right? Well, I'll talk about that in a bit. For now, let me talk about the other reason why some of you might be shocked to hear about this game. Basically, Solforge was actually released a long time ago, in May 2016, after a 3-year early access period. So technically, it was created in 2013, and Solforge would then proceed to get shut down in January 2017, only 7 months after the full release, although a deal with Grinding Gear Games of Path of Exile fame would keep the game online. And although the game would cease to have updates, the community would create an unofficial client to basically improve the game with new features and bug fixes, known as Reforged. However, in December 2018, Stoneblade themselves, not Grinding Gear Games, would ask for Reforged to be shut down, with both the official and unofficial servers kicking the bucket in January of 2019. I had a quick look at some posts stating 6 years ago as to why Solforge potentially died off, and it basically boiled down to Stoneblade being really slow to fix issues, spending money on things like rebuilding the client app, and none to making new content, which in the live service industry is just asking for your game to die. This new app that they rebuilt, by the way, would end up being a complete disaster of a client. It was insanely buggy and broken, the first ladder or ranking system in the game would randomly get reset or erased halfway through a season, with the developer having zero intention of restoring it, which ended up causing players to just leave. Rightfully so, that sounds like an abysmal time. So in other words, a bunch of mismanagement and lack of quality control, it sounds like. But not to worry, I suppose, since Solforge would be revived, brought back from the dead several years later in 2021 with a Kickstarter project, which was successfully funded with $250,000 raised for a sequel to Solforge called Solforge Fusion, which would be both a physical and digital card game, unlike the previous game, which was purely digital. The physical version would be released in 2023 and the digital version was released a year later, and it all seemed hunky-dory, and it was, for about a month. Enter May 2024, a new Twitter post. Play Solforge Fusion today, available on Steam. Play against your friends. Endure and earn in the roguelite campaign. Collect and fuse one-of-a-kind decks. Plus, coming soon to @Solana, collectibles and trading? #Web3 Gaming? Oh no. Yeah, that's right. Just a month after the digital release, Solforge Fusion would announce Web3 integration. Now, I don't know if this was pre-planned, but surprising your player base, and most likely your old loyal player base with NFTs, is not the greatest move ever. It really just puts a sour taste in your mouth, especially since this is 4 years after the collapse of NFTs, and by now, everyone collectively agrees that NFTs are just a scam. There's a stigma for a reason. But speaking of the NFTs though, you can find them here in the Magic Eden marketplace. Surprisingly, these are actually a bit differently handled compared to other NFT card games, since these are half decks being minted into NFTs rather than individual cards. Because of how this game works, you don't create a deck with individual cards. It's a bit weird, but basically you get these things known as half decks, which are randomly generated with cards, and you combine two half decks to make a full deck. So you don't actually build a deck from scratch, you combine two randomly created halves and hope they work together. But that half deck is what you mint into an NFT and traded. So hey, at least you're getting multiple cards, I guess. The most expensive NFT half deck goes for around $300, which is still not great, but it's not the worst, and that's the best compliment I can muster, honestly. Solforge Fusion NFTs. It's not the worst. Although the dumbest thing about these listings is that you can't actually see what these cards do. You just get a list of what they are. In order to see what they do and what stats they have, you would need to go to the Solforge website and search for every single card. There's 10 in each half deck, so hope your copy and paste game is on point. But this is the first time I've heard of this kind of deck building style. It's interesting. It's apparently an evolution of Richard Garfield's game Keyforge, released in 2018, where you play a fully random and unique deck that you're not allowed to modify after buying. But in Solforge's case, it's 2 half decks instead of just the 1 full deck. So there's a bit more potential for customization since you can mix and match different half decks. Now if you've been paying attention, you'll realize that the original Solforge came out in 2016, 2 years before Keyforge, meaning that this deck building mechanic was not present in the original version. It's wholly created for Fusion. In fact, Fusion actually plays a bit differently from the original version with several changes that I obviously can't attest to since I never played it. But these negative reviews on Steam gives a little idea on what has changed. As for the physical card game, you could buy booster kits from your local card game stores or from their website, costing about 32 Australian for a booster kit, which consists of 4 faction decks totaling up to 128 cards. And you can actually scan these cards into the digital version, and I suppose mint them into an NFT. So to be fair, it's probably the best implementation of an NFT card game I've seen, since you still have the physical card even if someone buys your NFT version. You just won't be able to use them in the digital version. Now one final thing before I dig into the actual digital game itself, but Solforge Fusion is unfortunately not in the same situation as Shardbound, where the OG devs sold the rights to an NFT company to later defile it. No, unfortunately, the decision for NFTs is wholly supported by Justin Gary. In a town hall posted on their official Twitter account in August, he talks about the development timeline, and if you look real close, right here, yeah, this game is going to have a crypto coin to boot.
More functionality on the Web3 side, SFG community governance, SFG seasonal staking.
Well, not going to. It already has one, Solforge Fusion Coin, or SFG. It released around the same time they announced NFTs for a double punch to the face to longtime fans. And it did well for a bit, but as of right now, it's going down a bit of a downward spiral, so there you go. But now the actual game. Honestly, it's pretty fun. I did enjoy playing it, and it didn't feel like yet another carbon copy of Hearthstone. It does have some pretty interesting mechanics in it, so let me walk you through the basics. In Solforge, a full complete deck comprises of 2 half decks, which I said earlier, which have to be from 2 different factions. You're not allowed to use 2 half decks from the same faction. Each half deck comprises of 10 unique cards, for a total of 20. In a match, you start off with 50 health points and draw up to 5 cards, with one person having the forge, as seen with this glowy icon here. This alternates each turn, and whoever has the forge goes first. After the draw phase, you move to the action phase, which comprises of 4 steps. Each player can only play 1 card per action step, which is denoted by these icons, but can play any amount of abilities if a monster has them, which obviously makes monster cards with abilities far more valuable than textless cards, which is par for the course in most TCGs. The action steps go in order of the forge holder, then the non-forge holder, back to the forge holder, and then to the non-forge holder once again. In total, you'll play 2 cards each turn. Also, there's no resource in this game like land, mana, or tributes. You can play any card. After the action phase is done, the combat phase can begin. In Solforge, battles take place in these 5 lanes, and you can only put in a single monster in each. If you place another creature in a lane that already has one, this is called replacing it, and there are cards that play into that. If there are 2 monsters opposing each other, they will do battle if at least one of them is in the front row. And battle is your simple attack stat versus health stat. Damage is dealt simultaneously, and if your health hits 0, it dies. And very importantly, health is not recovered after battle, so eventually a creature will probably die off. If a monster is not opposed and is in the front row, then they do direct damage to the player, and obviously if a player has 0 health, they lose the game. Now going back a little bit, I mentioned something called the front row. In Solforge, there's the front row and the back row. Creatures in the back row can't attack. They can only retaliate against an attacking creature, but they do move to the front row in the next turn unless they have the defender keyword. And this mechanic ties directly into the forge and non-forge holder system. Whoever has the forge when they summon a creature is summoned to the front row, ready to attack, while the non-forge holder summons in the back row, unless their card has the aggressive keyword. Then that card can be summoned to the front. But don't worry, since like I said, whoever has the forge alternates each turn, so you'll each have a chance at summoning directly to the front row. When the combat phase is done, the turn ends. Players discard their hand and a new turn starts. The forge goes to the next player and rinse and repeat. Now the unique mechanic of this game is that cards can level up. Each time you play a card, the next level version of that card gets put into the discard pile, and once 3 turns have passed, you reach the end of deck cycle, where you shuffle the discard and draw piles together, so you then have a chance at drawing your newly leveled cards, with it replacing the previous level. And cards can get pretty strong. It can start from a simple destroy a level 1 creature, then it's destroy a level 1 or 2 creature, then finally just destroy any creature. Or summon 2 2/2 wisps, or summon a 2/2 wisp and an 8/8 tree, to finally summon 2 8/8 trees. Monsters have their damage and health stats increased, as well as their ability with each level up too. It's a pretty fun system. And the other mechanic is your hero, or Forgeborn. They have their own abilities as well that you can trigger once they're ready. Each Forgeborn readies and levels at the same time, which is at the end of the deck cycle step. I only really played around with 2 Forgeborns, but one had the ability to summon a minion as well as upgrade a card in my hand immediately, and later levels had the ability to give all my monsters on the field 5/5. While the other one let me sacrifice a card to give another 5/5 with a later ability to just destroy any creature I wanted. I should also mention that you can only use these abilities once, but it is pretty cool. It added something a little extra to the otherwise very limiting 1 card per step rule, and that's the general gist. There's obviously way more things in the game, especially keywords and whatnot, but we'd be here all day if I were to talk about them. But it's pretty casual and designed to be fairly quick. Matches only go for around 5 deck cycles, since on the 5th one, you reach sudden death. I never personally got to that point. All my matches, which arguably wasn't that many, usually ended by the 4th round. But it's a decent and unique card game, at least to me. I haven't played a card game like this. I had a bit of fun. The deck I ended up making was a sacrifice and minion deck. After realizing that being able to summon a ton of minions isn't really that amazing in this game due to the 5-lane limit, I ended up combining the starter Utera deck, which focused on minion summons, and with a Necrium deck that focused on sacrificing monsters to either buff me or straight up destroy enemies, which paired pretty well together. Another thing I liked about Solforge Fusion, the digital version, is the roguelite single player campaign. In it, you pick a deck that you made and fight through several enemies before culminating in a final showdown with the boss. Before each encounter, however, you can pick a global perk that buffs up your deck in some way. Then you pick an enemy you want to face, with some of them having a modifier. Either global, so it affects both you and the enemy, or just an enemy modifier. These luckily only last for that battle, it doesn't carry over. And regardless of if you win or lose, the deck that you use gets experience, and when that deck levels up, you either just get a cosmetic upgrade like a Prisma foil, or a permanent upgrade for the roguelite mode that carries over in future runs. And if you fully win, you unlock the next ascension level, similar to something like Slay the Spire, that adds an extra condition or modifier. The first one simply being you have 5 less health. That said, each deck has separate leveling and buffs, so you would need to re-level each new deck by either doing the roguelike mode or doing an online battle. The ascension levels, however, are kept permanently. Although, what kinda sucks is that as a free-to-play, that's the only campaign you have access to. In order to access the only other level, you need to buy the $10 DLC, which also fully unlocks the Mastery track. The Mastery track being the single player progression system that you can level up by getting experience from the roguelite mode or online versus. You still have access to this as a free-to-play, being able to unlock new enemies, new in-run buffs, as well as getting mystery chests which grant you rewards like potions you can use in the roguelike mode, gold which is the free currency, and potentially a soulbind potion, which tie into these things called phantom half decks, which are temporary half decks they can use for a week, then they're gone forever. And that soulbind potion lets you turn a phantom half deck into a permanent one, which leads me to my first complaint. As a free-to-play, these phantom half decks are going to be the main reward you're going to be getting. You do get a permanent half deck every once in a while, but you would need to play for a long time to start getting the few that they give away as part of the battle pass. I had a quick look at the battle pass, and the first chance at a permanent half deck is at the 100,000 EXP milestone, where you're given a single guaranteed soulbind potion. For the record, you can only level up the battle pass in the online multiplayer mode, which luckily you can match up against bots, since not many people are playing this game. And I was getting an average of around 3000 EXP per match, which is enough to usually get you to the next battle pass reward, at least in the beginning. But divide 100k by 3000 and it'll be around 33 matches before a single permadeck potion. After this point though, the threshold to the next reward increases to 5000 each time, and the next permanent half deck is at 160k. which is a random half deck by the way, you can't pick a specific faction. So that's another 20 matches. Then the 200k milestone, which is 13 more matches, which also pushes the reward threshold to 10k per reward, with the next permadeck reward being at 350,000, so make that another 50 matches. And finally, the last permanent half deck you'll get for free is at 460k, so 36 more matcherinos. So in total for this battle pass, in order to get 1 soulbind potion and 4 permanent half decks for a total of 5, you'd need to do around 152 to 153 matches, give or take. That's a lot of fucking matches, and a standard match on average took me around 8 minutes, so in total, around 20 to 21 hours, which isn't that long I suppose for a battle pass, but for basically just 5 half decks, it certainly isn't a lot. Because remember, you can't pick the individual cards or even factions since the half decks are all randomly generated from a selection of 40,000 different cards, so good luck getting the ones you want. Now to be fair, the premium battle pass as well as the premium mystery tracks are only $10 each, and you do get far more permanent decks in them, so it's probably worth it if you really like the game. But this then leads me to the cash shop and free currency income. Now this game is free to play, so I understand the need for a cash shop to keep servers running, but unfortunately you have very few options as a free to play here. The majority of things you can buy, you either need to use Ember, which is the premium currency, or just real money. And unfortunately, you don't get much of an Ember income in this game. You can get some as part of the battle pass, but that's it. You might get enough for a half deck or two. That said, it is possible to buy certain permanent half decks for 6k of the free currency, but you only get maybe a couple hundred in a mystery chest, with the majority of your income coming from these daily quests, 150 for an easy or 300 for a hard. These quests only get refilled every 4 hours, with you only being able to hold 6 at a time, so every day you'll refill 6 quests. Now let's do some maths here. To get 6k gold, let's say you get an equal amount of easy and hard quests, for an average of 225 gold per quest. You would need to do 26.67 quests to get 6k, and if each quest takes 4 hours to refill, you'd have to wait around 106.67 hours to get the quests necessary to get a single permanent half deck, or in other words, every 4.4 days, assuming you're keeping on top of the quests and not letting it overflow. And okay, that's not the worst, I'm sure there's worse monetizations out there, but remember, you're only getting a half deck with random cards. You can't just break down cards or half decks to get a currency that lets you craft a specific card like most other TCGs. It's all random all the time. But what makes this really bad is a recent patch they put out on the 12th of November, Beakers and Bones, that updated the Soulbind Potion. Store update. Soulbind Potion changes. Soulbind Potions will no longer be available for gold purchase, and Soulbind Potions are receiving an increase in Ember pricing. Yeah, that's right. For some reason they removed the ability for free-to-play players to buy Soulbind Potions with gold, and unfortunately I don't know the original gold or Ember prices since not many people covered this game. So I can't tell you how long it would have taken a free-to-play to save up for a Soulbind Potion, but I did find this comment on the patch notes by a user stating that doing your dailies for a few weeks and being able to get a Soulbind was a nice reward. So who knows? Was that logging in a couple of days over a few weeks, or was it logging in every day and always doing quests? Regardless, removing that option and increasing the premium price is unbelievably scummy. It seemed like a nice way for free-to-play players to get a consistent stream of permanent decks, and more importantly, a way for them to actually pick and choose their favorites from all the plethora of phantom decks that they'll get. For the price of one permanent half deck, you can get 6 or 12 phantom half decks. So theoretically, you could save up, buy a bunch of phantoms, see which ones you like, get a soulbind and make it permanent, all as a free-to-play. Or hell, do what that user said and just get the free monthly deck bundle with 4 phantom half decks and choose one of those to make permanent. But nope, they got rid of that. A year and a half after the game's initial early access release. Why? Like, yeah, it's possible to get one in a mystery chest in the mastery track, but 1, it's random, and 2, it's one time. These don't reset. So now if you ever find a phantom deck you like, assuming you've exhausted all your one-time mastery track rewards, you would have to fork over money just to make it permanent, since you only have a limited time before it's gone. Forever. And on top of all that, yeah, it's not over. Let's talk about the current price of a Soulbind Potion. 200 Ember, which conveniently is not an amount you can get directly. The lowest bundle is 50 Ember for $5, then 120 for 10, then 280 for 20. USD, by the way. The minimum you have to buy is $20 for 280, no matter what combinations of 10s and 5s you try. You would need to buy at least $20 worth to get a single Soulbind potion. Not a pack of Soulbind, just a single potion. So it's either pay $5 for a random perma half deck or $20 for a phantom deck of your choosing. Need I remind you that a physical booster kit where you get 4 faction half decks is 32 Australian dollary dues, which translates to 20 USD, which is the same price as a single Soulbind potion. How does that make any sense? And remember, you can also scan the physical half decks into the digital version. What the fuck? I think I'm actually going insane. Alright, to be fair, shipping to Australia apparently costs $80. The fuck? The hell's going on in the US right now? Don't answer that. Where was I? Right, Soulbind potions. It's fucking stupid and scummy that they removed it as a free-to-play option. But that's it for the cash up. I think you get the idea. Look, as a card game, it's alright. It definitely leans more on the casual side since you can't fully customize your deck with individual cards. But at least there's less of a chance of running into meta decks. I'm sure there are powerful combinations out there, but it doesn't seem super sweaty and feels pretty accessible. Mechanically, it's okay. I'm not really a fan of just being able to play one card per step, but like I said, casual. Visually, it looks kinda basic. Like, the card art isn't bad, but it does unfortunately look like generic fantasy, and the cards don't even change between levels, only the border does. They totally could have added some extra flair there, but I'm probably just being overly nitpicky. Some other negatives though: the game likes to hang at the end of a turn, it takes a while for an action or selection to register, and sometimes it just won't let me play a card at all. It is an early access game, so maybe it'll get fixed, assuming of course they aren't focused on just peddling out their crypto coin, so here's hoping. And even though they boast 40,000 cards, I don't really see this as a positive or even a selling point, because I doubt it's all well balanced. I mean, even from the small amount I have, the textless or abilityless cards are basically worthless. I guess they're supposed to have better base stats, but abilities completely overshadow them and are way more useful, especially since abilities aren't restricted to one per turn. So much like how Borderlands boasts a bazillion, gajillion, more billion guns, and really only 20 guns are fun to use, and even less than that are even viable, I'm just gonna assume that significantly less than the 40,000 cards are even worth playing. Just for comparison, Magic the Gathering is estimated to have around 27,000 unique cards, not including reprints, in 2024, and MTG was released 32 years ago. So yeah, just a little fun fact for you. In the end, my verdict for Solforge Fusion is just get the physical version. Not only will you get the digital decks as well, you'll probably have a higher chance of finding people to play with in real life than in the digital version with barely 10 players online. And hey, if and when the digital version shuts down, at least you'll still have the physical cards to play with, and the worthless NFTs too, but I mean, you can just ignore that part. But yeah, Solforge Fusion. It's a decent casual card game. Hell yeah! Now this is legally distinct pod racing! This is Ascent Rivals, a multiplayer, legally distinct pod racing game that is slated for a 2026 release. The trailer doesn't look too bad. Oh my god. Yeah, it doesn't look the worst, but my god do they need to tone down the fucking light beams and JJ Abrams' lens flare. I can barely see. I definitely wouldn't want to be flashbanged while high-speed racing, but to be fair to Genin Games, this is a pretty interesting idea. At least they aren't just copying and following the same trends that every other NFT dev go for. They are calling it a battle royale, so I'll say they're only half following trends. Although they are going for somewhat of an untapped market here, since there hasn't been a proper pod racing game in the Star Wars universe in quite some time. Hey guys, it's your boy. So, while I was editing this video, a new Star Wars pod racing game got announced. Star Wars Galactic Racer, so yeah. I wrote, recorded, and edited this before this got announced, so you know. Just disregard these next talking points. Sorry, Ascent rivals, your relevance just fell off. Sorry, not sorry. With the last game being Star Wars Racer Revenge, originally released in 2002, but did see a digital port to the PS3 and PS4 in 2015 and 2016 respectively, so there's definitely a niche there. The only other game I can see that's also going for this dual-engine high-speed hover racing gameplay is Death Grip, which does have a demo but no definitive release date. But if you're interested in this type of racing, feel free to check Death Grip out. At least from what I can see, that game doesn't have any NFTs or Web3 attached to it. But anyways, back to Ascent Rivals. Of course, the game page on Steam doesn't mention or allude to any Web3 elements, so if you were just passing by, you really wouldn't suspect that this was an NFT game. The only thing I can maybe see being a dog whistle to Web3 is this paragraph that talks about the competition and stakes, mainly because they use the words contracts and staking, which honestly, now looking at it, I'm probably just reaching. But obviously, since this game is in the video, there has to be some connection to NFTs, crypto, and blockchain, right? Well, yeah. In fact, if you look real closely at the screenshots and trailer, you can find the clues. In them, you can see these billboards around the arena, and they aren't just some parody or in-game universe ads. No, they name real-world companies like MSI and Starforge Systems, which don't have any Web3 connections, but these other groups do. Sundial, Anastasia Labs, Handle, Honeycomb, and Drip Drops, all of which have some connection to a blockchain platform called Cardano, which leads me to the whole point and the whole reason for Ascent Rivals' existence. Basically, Ascent Rivals is just going to be a glorified ad for Cardano. This thread posted in the Cardano subreddit a few months ago by Ascent Rivals announced that they will be representing Cardano at one of the biggest gaming events, PAX West, with someone asking how would the game use Cardano, with Ascent Rivals replying that they'll be building a set of tools to elevate the esports scene using Cardano's infrastructure, since they believe that the future of esports and indie gaming will be shaped by Web3, several years after everyone collectively said no to Web3 gaming. Seems like a solid choice. And further goes on to state that they want to focus on onboarding new users to the Cardano ecosystem via gaming and marketing efforts in person and in online gaming events, and drive the next major wave of Cardano adoption. So yeah, it's just a big marketing ad to funnel people into blockchain and Web3 garbage. They also have two links to a website called Project Catalyst, which is a platform that lets people propose an idea to the Cardano community and they vote on whether or not that idea deserves funding. Genin Games, aka the devs of Ascent Rivals, have proposed 9 things, with requests for funding totaling 660k, and none of them have been approved. Ouch. Not even the Web3 community believes in this one. But it didn't stop them from actually attending PAX West. They got a booth and everything, but looking over what little footage they put out, I don't really see any banners or logos of any of the blockchain groups that they're partnering with. Not even Cardano, the platform they're supposedly repping for. But the reception was positive at least. Even Luke from Linus Tech Tips complimented them in one of their WAN show episodes.
The most standout game to me was a game called Ascent Rivals.
This looks
Their Discord's
awesome.
really awesome. People have tournaments all the time. The mechanics are really cool. It felt really intuitive to me.
Although Luke doesn't mention Ascent's connection to Web3, blockchain, or anything like that, which I feel in a tech show would be kind of important. Unless, of course, Genin Games failed to mention any of that, which is curious, considering they're very specifically representing Cardano. You'd think it'd be an important point to make. But clearly Genin Games is hiding it, or not making it obvious that they're advertising for a blockchain platform, since even on the landing page of the Ascent Rivals website mentions nothing of Web3. Hell, their supposed sponsors or partners that are listed have nothing to do with Web3. In order to see any of that Web3 connections, you'd need to click here, to Cardano Clash, a tournament they held 6 months prior. And this page lists every single Web3 connection, and there are a fair amount of them too. So there you go, 100% confirmed Web3 game. Whether or not they'll create NFTs and a crypto coin remains to be seen, but they'll probably just stick to using the Cardano crypto coin, which isn't doing the worst, currently worth a whopping 44 cents, but it's overall a green line, so that's something, right? Just don't click on these other buttons, they're not important. Just ignore that. Regardless, at least the game seems okay, and people at the very least had a fun time playing it. It just sucks that Ascent Rivals is just going to be a glorified Web3 blockchain ad. Who knows, maybe with enough pushback against Web3, this game might shed all that baggage off and just be a normal video game. If not, well, at least we got Death Grip to look forward to, right? Please don't turn out to be a garbage NFT scam.
You are no longer my master. You are a demon to be slain.
Oh boy, another card game. Welcome to Shogun Curse, a deck building card game made by the makers of Oh Baby Card. Oh man. Now you would think, alright, a card game deck builder made by a known Web3 developer. This is a slam dunk and obvious NFT game, right? Well, you'd actually only be half right, because Shogun Curse, surprisingly, doesn't actually have any NFTs. In fact, there's no integration with NFTs to it at all. Even on their own website, on the landing page for Shogun Curse, there isn't mention or links to NFTs. They don't even try and get you to buy any. It seemed like an attempt to make a non-NFT game. In fact, I thought this was maybe a way for Oh Baby Games to quietly and slowly move away from NFTs as a whole. But remember what I said earlier, you'd only be half right. Enter the Oh Baby Passes, an NFT battle pass or something that levels up when you play games in the Oh Baby Games catalog. And yes, that includes Shogun Curse. They launched this in October of this year, long after Shogun Curse, so no, they aren't moving away from NFTs, they're doubling down even harder to try and squeeze as much money as they can. I mean, one of the achievements is to quite literally spend more than $1,000 in their marketplace. They know exactly what they're doing. So yeah, while Shogun Curse is designed to be a single player non-NFT game, I hope, with no actual NFT integration to it, it still interacts with NFTs in the form of their global overarching battle pass. Now before we get to the game, there is one more thing I want to talk about, and that's the price. See, Shogun Curse is not a free-to-play game. It's a paid game, which is fair enough, but the asking price for Shogun Curse is 30 Australian, which let me tell you this right now, this game is absolutely not worth that much, so it's pretty expensive. But if you go to the Oh Baby Games website and buy it there, it's only $10, or specifically $9.35 plus 65 cents in sales tax. This price I assume to be USD, so around 14 Australian. It's a pretty big difference. It's a 2 times markup if you buy it on Steam. Now I totally understand charging a bit extra on Steam due to Valve taking a 30% cut on all sales, but certainly not double the original price, and I would have left it there. But then I checked the mobile app stores since Shogun Curse is also available there, and it's priced at $15 Australian on the Apple Store and $8 Australian on the Google Play Store? What? It's even cheaper there than on their own website. And both platforms also take a cut in sales, which is either 15% or 30% depending on the circumstance. Although it's called Shogun's Curse on the Google Play Store. I don't know, maybe that's why it's cheaper. Those extra characters are subsidizing the cost. But what the hell? Why is Steam's price so expensive? I did a little more digging and found out something even crazier. Shogun Curse was originally priced at $14.50 on Steam. If you look on SteamDB, before March 31st of this year, it was $14 with occasional sales to $11, which means it actually was priced around the same amount as the original, before randomly increasing by more than double. And I do mean randomly, because there was no notice from Oh Baby Games that the price would increase. And before you think, well maybe exiting out of early access caused the price to increase. I could believe that if it weren't for the fact that Shogun Curse had their 1.0 release on the 12th of December 2024, 3 whole months before the price increase. There is literally no news or updates around that time that would justify the random increase in price. Nothing on Steam and nothing on the Oh Baby Games news sites. As a final precaution, I decided to look at the Wayback Machine to see if potentially SteamDB was just bugging out. And nope. On the February capture of this page, the game was priced at $10 USD, which does equal around 14 Australian. So yeah, no idea. Man, NFT devs really can't go a single game without doing something scummy, huh? Anyways, as for the game though, It's basically a very unpolished and clunkier version of Slay the Spire, which the game takes obvious inspiration from. The game plays basically the same. You pick a character, which there are only two, the Accursed, whose starting relic makes him stronger the lower health he has. He's your typical warrior character, getting cards that give him might buffs, damage up, applying bleed stacks, vampirism, i.e. lifesteal, and inflicting enemies with defense or damage down. And the Huntress, whose main mechanic revolves around generating these bullets, which her starting relic gives her one every turn, but can also get them from cards as well, and with these bullets, she can power up her attacks or get more defense the less bullets she has. She also gets cards based on applying poison stacks. And after picking a character, you go to a map screen, where you pick the path you want to go. You got different encounters like normal or elites, a resting stop where you can rest or upgrade a card, a shop to buy relics, cards, or to remove a card, a treasure node, a random encounter, and of course at the top, a boss encounter. Combat works the exact same. You have cards that use up energy and you only have 3 energy at the start. You discard your hand at the end of each turn, and once you run out of cards to draw, you shuffle your discard pile into your draw pile. And you also got card mechanics like Vanish that once used is removed for the rest of the battle. You can see what the enemy is going to do based on these icons, shield or defense is removed at the end of each turn, etc, etc. It's very much the same. And listen, I don't have any problems with a game being a clone or taking notes from other games, because it just means more games for me to play. I mean, I literally have a video on this channel talking about Vampire Survivor clones since I enjoy that genre a lot. As long as you're trying to come up with something new and different rather than just being a one-to-one clone, then it's all Gucci. And I will say Shogun Curse does at least try to add in new things. So let me walk you through what I liked and what makes this game kinda different from Slay the Spire. First off, the visual presentation. The art is good, the character and monster designs are great, being obviously based off of Japanese mythos, and there is a decent amount of variety in the monster designs. The backgrounds too also look cool, although it's pretty obvious what is in the background and what's the additional set dressing. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it does look a bit funny. And I like the card art. It looks way more interesting than Solforge's card art. Sorry, not sorry, Solforge. Another neat thing is that in the beginning of the game, you get a cutscene. No animations though, it's just more still images, but it's presented in a comic book style. So hey, at least they tried something. It even has voice acting, although calling it acting is a bit generous.
And it is your doing. Master, you, sworn to protect us, have betrayed us all. Why have you forsaken your duty? How? You wield a cursed magic. This is not the way of our ancestors. Unhand me. Your power, it's cursed. I will not succumb to it.
Choice is an illusion for the weak. Accept your fate. Embrace this dark gift. Let it fill you as it has filled this land. You will understand in time.
No, this cannot be my path.
Yeah, it's kinda rough, maybe just add a tad bit more emotion there, but I appreciate the attempt. And that is, unfortunately, just about the only things I enjoyed about Shogun Curse. But let me just quickly mention the other unique things it does before I get to the whining portion. In Shogun Curse, relics are both a passive trinket as well as your consumable. They each have a unique effect, but they can also be activated to provide a far more powerful version of their passive effect for the battle. From basic effects like increase max HP to heal HP, when you kill an enemy draw a card to draw 5 cards, or even when facing an elite enemy or boss get 3 might to get 1 might every turn for the rest of the battle. Very few relics don't have an activate effect, most others do. But the caveat of course is that once you use a relic, it's gone. So you need to be careful on when you use it or even if it's worth using. I thought it was an interesting mechanic since it does tie into the story of using demonic powers and how far you'll go to win. And since the effects are pretty powerful, you do have the option of making a final stand in an otherwise losing situation, and it might just turn the tide of battle, so it's pretty alright. Another unique mechanic is that when you begin a run, you can pick any of the 4 starting zones to start off in, and in any order too. Eventually, you'll have to win against all 4 to get to the final area, but this was a cool little thing, and after beating an area, you get a curse or a debuff to make the subsequent areas slightly harder. And finally, the thing that differentiates this game from Slay the Spire is that Shogun Curse is a roguelite, not a roguelike, meaning this game has meta progression, things like damage increases, healing after battle, increased soul gain, which is the meta currency, a starting relic, hell, even 1 extra AP per turn. And this is what leads me to the crux of this game, my major issue with this game. Shogun Curse is hard, like too hard, to the point of it being completely unfair, because I assume this game is entirely balanced around having these roguelite upgrades. And I know, in roguelites you're supposed to start off weak and then get stronger, but most roguelites don't kill you off within the first couple of battles, and most roguelites also give you a good amount of currency per run, even in failed runs, to get upgrades. In Shogun Curse, there's barely any upgrades at all, and it's also weak too. 20% more damage, 15% more souls, 20 more HP. It's such a paltry amount that it feels more like you're trying to get upgrades just to reach the starting line, rather than being at the starting line and getting stronger from there. It really feels like just an afterthought, or just a way to pad out the playtime, because to be honest, the game would have been much better if it was designed without it. But let me walk you through my experience with playing this game. Without any upgrades, I was barely getting past a couple of encounters before just straight up dying. The first couple of runs, I didn't even get close to the first boss. I don't even think I reached the halfway point. Normal enemies would be doing double-digit damage, and you would verse multiple enemies at a time. And it doesn't help that the reward for winning an encounter is complete garbage. If it's a normal encounter, you get a free card and 8 gold. If it's an elite or boss encounter, it's a relic, a free card, and 8 gold. The gold amount never changes. It's always 8 gold. No matter how far you are in a run or who you fight, it's always 8 gold. There's not even 8 coins in the picture. For reference, a relic in the store can cost upwards of 280 gold. Card removal starts off at 60 and only increases from there, and cards usually 60 plus. You barely get any gold from battles. But by the third fight, I was battling against enemies that have nearly 100 health, and my cards were not even close to doing even 10 damage. And not only that, enemies would do 25 times 2 damage? Hello? That's 50 damage on the third encounter. A normal encounter, not even an elite. Hell, not even halfway through this map, I fought the same 25 times 2 damage dealing enemy, but this time, he's with another enemy who also has 70 health. Like, Jesus Christ, this is the first act. Why do they have so much health and do so much damage? I had one particularly infuriating encounter once again in the first act, where this enemy would just prevent me from either attacking or using skills, which are your defensive and support cards, each turn, and he was paired up with the 25 times 2 damage dealing asshole. This is the first act. Not only that, it bugged out, and even after killing the monk mage, his effect was on me permanently, so I couldn't do a damn thing. What a fun and well-balanced game. And after losing to that encounter, because of course I lost, I had no way out, I get to the you died screen and look at my spoils for the run, and basically, I got nothing. Barely any experience and barely any meta currency. So not only is this game unbelievably difficult, it's also incredibly stingy and grindy too. But I could only keep trying. I would try each area once to see if there's one that's easier than the rest, and maybe there was, but every area felt the same and was filled with enemies with 100 HP and could do a ton of damage. In one run, I even reached the boss of one of the areas and was actually doing well. Then she decided to do 30 times 3 damage. For all you math nerds out there, that's 90 damage. Look at my health. That's more than my max. And she came packed with 2 ads that all debuff you too. Fun! At this point, I was getting frustrated to all hell, so I decided to boot up Slay the Spire. I haven't played since 2022, so maybe I'm just misremembering. Maybe Slay the Spire was this difficult as well. I decided to use a completely different profile and start again. No unlocks, nothing. Completely fresh, and see how far I'd go in a new run. Do you want to know how far I got? I got up to the boss of Act 3 and almost beat him. I suck at these games. I am not good at deck builders, even though I really like them. And yet I managed to get this far on basically a first run, and after playing Slay the Spire once, it immediately hit me the difference in quality and overall balance. It's night and day. Act 1 of Spire felt doable. It wasn't overwhelming and wasn't too punishing either. Enemies were dying pretty quickly. Then come Act 2 and it was a step up. It got a bit more challenging with trickier enemy compositions, patterns, and they started to do a bit more damage too. And finally Act 3 where it was really difficult. But at no point did it ever feel unfair or bullshit. The enemies and bosses all felt unique and had fun mechanics. Even the cards that are unlocked from the start felt interesting and had fun synergies. My deck revolved around getting a ton of strength. Basically, I had a card that I upgraded to have the innate trait, so it would always be in my starting hand. It was a power card, so it's active throughout the entire battle when played, in that every turn, it would spend 1 HP to draw 1 extra card. Then I had 2 more power cards that I would use. One would get me 2 strength every time I lost HP due to a card effect, and one that gave me 3 strength at the start of my turn. But one of the cards that I combined them with was a card called Dual Wield that let me pick an attack or power card to get 2 extra copies of. So I would either copy one of those to get either 6 or 9, nice, strength per turn depending on which I picked. Obviously the energy cost is a problem, but there's ways around that in STS. Honestly, it wasn't even that good of a deck, but it was fun to figure it out. Compare this to Shogun Curse, and Shogun Curse feels unfinished, which is a sentiment that the negative reviews on Steam echoes, especially the difficulty part. But after I had my fun with STS, I did another run of Shogun Curse and I managed to beat an area, which gave me a curse that made me deal 25% less damage and take 25% more damage on the first turn of every battle. Hooray! I of course lost about halfway through the next area, and hey look, instead of 60 souls, I got 227 souls this time. But do you see something odd about this screen? Something not right? It's this. Bosses slain. 25 souls. You only get 25 souls for beating an area boss. That's basically nothing. It's insane how stingy this game is. I went to the store to see what I could get and decided, well, 10 extra damage wasn't doing anything, maybe a starting relic would be better. So I clicked this button right here, and silly me, I thought this would be the amount that I would get refunded back. Nope, that's how much it costs to reset. The game refunded me the cost of the damage upgrade, which I guess was 150, and took 50 more away. Why does it cost resources to reset? When I realized what happened, I just sat there and honestly, I was just about to call it quits. I had less than 2 hours in this game at this point, so I could easily request a refund and be done with all this. And to be perfectly frank with you, I really wish I had, but I remembered something. This is a PC game. A single player, offline PC game. You know what I could use? Cheat engine. Yeah, I just gave myself 5,000 souls. I maxed out damage, which is only a bonus 20%, bonus souls, which was only 15%, gave me healing after battle, a starting relic, an extra card drawn on the first turn, and some extra health, and tried again. And it became slightly more tolerable. I wasn't losing most of my HP to normal mobs, and when I did lose some HP, I could at least get some of that back each battle. I was actually able to kill things before they did too much damage. But as I played, I noticed something. The enemies in each subsequent area don't actually get stronger. The only thing that changes is that you get a debuff when you beat an area. In a more well-designed game, the first areas you pick should be weaker to match your starting power. Then as you beat areas and get more powerful, the enemies should get progressively stronger to compensate. Yeah, that doesn't happen in Shogun Curse. And what this means is every single area is basically at their highest difficulty, which is why it felt so bad and unbalanced. It didn't matter which area you picked, it was all the same difficulty. Which means at some point when you've finished your build, it becomes really tedious, boring, and repetitive because you're essentially doing 4 areas of the same difficulty and a final boss area versus Slay the Spire's 3 increasingly difficult acts plus final act if you've beaten the game once. In this run, I actually went all the way and beat it, and not gonna lie, the actual enemy attack variety is pretty basic. Like I said, since it's essentially the same difficulty all throughout, the enemies all have very basic patterns. It's because you can pick any area to start off in is I assume the reason why all enemies are mechanically very simple. By the end of the second area, I already had my build, so it was 3 more areas of doing the same thing over and over again. The final area in particular, dragging on a whole bunch because it's basically just a boss gauntlet where you fight 2 bosses at the same time, 4 times. Then the final boss that has 2 phases. I don't even know if the final boss had any unique mechanics. It seemed like it would put up a shield or just do damage. Maybe I killed it too quickly, who knows, but it seemed like a very basic fight. Anyways, my final deck was built around stacking bleed on an enemy, then using a card that does X damage per stack of bleed. I was also stacking might for more damage, and energy wasn't really a problem since I had all these relics due to the sheer amount of enemies you fight in the 5 areas. I know it might look crazy, but honestly, it's way more simpler than it looks. Maybe this character's unlocked cards are more interesting, but his base cards are really basic. Just do damage, put a stack of bleed, get might, etc. But your reward for beating the final boss is the game freezing and almost crashing. Just kidding, it's another comic book style cutscene of the boss dying with your character not even being in it, with the boss possibly alluding to a secret boss a la Slay the Spire. I don't know, and I don't particularly care to find out. You get a victory screen this time, which gotta give props to the art guys, it looks good. And a final soul count, which I got a total of 1,168. Without the 15% soul upgrade would only be 1,000. You only get 1,000 souls for beating a run. So the 5,000 souls I gave myself was equivalent to 5 completed runs. Also, look at that. Beating the final boss only nets me 75 souls. For beating the final boss, only 75. The cheapest upgrade in the store is 150. The final boss isn't even worth the cheapest upgrade. We get some levels too, which unlocks some new cards and relics, and a choice to either end the run or go to the Endless Realm, which is the Endless Mode. That's kinda neat. I don't do it though, because I want to be done with this game, but beating a run unlocks the next corruption level, which adds more modifiers, and that's it. That's Shogun Curse, or Shogun's Curse if you're playing this on Android. It's rough and really unpolished. In fact, there's even more things to complain about, and I'll quickly go through them since this video is already pretty long. The tutorial fight against the boss has no music, even though it's meant to be a pivotal part of the story. Only some things have sound effects. The game has trouble showing more than 3 instances of damage at a time. Every single time an enemy dies or when a fight is finished, the game stutters and freezes for a second. It also stutters when doing an attack with a big effect, which unfortunately can't do anything about since there's barely anything in the game settings. Also, a major issue is that there is no saving in the middle of a run. Even though the tutorial says that when you reach a rest and save node, it will automatically save the game, I went and tried it, got to a rest and save node, exited to the main menu, and nope. No saved progress. It just tells me to start a new game. And this was pointed out to me in a Steam review. Considering a run could go over an hour long, not being able to save in the middle of it is pretty bad. And yeah, I believe that's everything. Honestly, while I didn't like the game that much, aside from the art, props to the art team by the way, solid effort, I do appreciate Oh Baby Games trying to make a non-NFT game. It's at least better than most of the NFT trash I've played, but is it worth $30? Hell no. Maybe for the original price of 10 bucks I would maybe say try it out, but let me leave you all with this. Slay the Spire goes on sale for $9 Australian, and Slay the Spire 2 comes out in a few months. So what better way to prepare than to play the first game? So, my final verdict for Shogun Curse is just get Slay the Spire instead. And that is one horribly optimized abandoned VR experience, one casual card game turned crypto scam, and one half NFT game that is no longer getting any more fixes or patches, even though it really needs it. But even more amazing is that this is another episode where every game actually worked and launched. So hooray! That's what, like 3 episodes in a row now? That's incredible. And yes, I am counting the Guild Saga episode. What? It counts, it's an episode in the series. But anyways, sorry this took a bit longer than usual. I had family events and also getting injured somehow. Twice. I hurt my lower back randomly and the pain extended all the way to my thighs, which was weird. It was pretty difficult to sit down or even go to sleep, so that sucked. And then shortly after recovering from that, I rolled my ankle something fierce. I can just feel the old age debuff getting stronger, but that's not anything you guys need to worry about. Anyways, thank you to all my channel members and my subscribers. Your support helps me keep my dopamine receptors working, and for the rest of you, I hope you didn't hate it. And that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and a sub if you did, and I'll catch ya on the next one. See ya!